Tesvav, Kelim Perek Tesvav, Mishnah Gimel, and we're moving on with Kli Eitz. Yam Nofa Shel Siltinu, the Gersa should be Yam Nofa Shel Salosin Tome. Right. A salos is somebody who makes soiles, somebody who prepares, who makes flour. A yam nofa is the big sieve. The nofa is a sieve, and the yam nofa, why it's called a yam, because you have the sieve, and round the outside of the sieve you have a rim. So it looks like a pond surrounded by the beach. So it's called a yam. Anyway, this yam nofa is tamei. Now what material is this? The actual sieve. This is one of the few cases in the Masechta that we actually deal with the material called sok. It's made from the fibers are made from the hairs of izim, the noitzo shel izim, and therefore has a din of kli sok, which has the same din as eitz, which means it must have a base kibble, which is also lekabel. Now, in the normal circumstances, if you assume that the purpose of the sieve is to let through the good stuff and to keep the rubbish behind, that is not also lekabel, because also lekabel means that you actually use this keli to transport and carry, to be metaltel, what's left inside. But if all that's left inside is rubbish, which you chuck away straight away, then you cannot consider that keli to be a kli kibble. However, that's why the Mishnah says the word salos in people who make soilis. When you make soilis, it's the other way around. After you've taken off the real big rubbish, the chaff, you're left with the flour. But if you want to change the flour into soilis, into fine flour, the bad bit is the powdery stuff that falls to the bottom. And what you're left with is the rich soilis. So you have a very, very fine sieve, shake it, and all the powdery, the kemach, throws out. What you're left with is the fine flour, the soilis, the bigger bits, the richer bits, and therefore what's left is actually supposed to be left, and therefore it's considered to be a kli kibble because it's actually makabel the soilis. I would recommend you to look at the Perish the Bar Tanura in Mesechta Ovos, Perik Hey Mishnah Tesvav, where he describes the process of making flour, and you'll see there that it's actually the soiles that gets left, that gets retained and left in the kli. However, if it's just a domestic one used in the kitchen, where you're actually not making soiles, therefore what's left behind is the rubbish. In such a case, it's not called a kli osele kibble. The whole point is it lets things through. And the retention of rubbish does not make the yam nofa into a kli kibble. Quite easy. Rabbi Huda Afshel Godelis, even if the sieve is not used by a person making sodas, used actually by a Godelis is a lady who plaits and braids girls' hair. So in those days they didn't have as many showers as we have, and very often when plaiting a girl's hair, lots of rubbish would fall out, dust and goodness knows what. Would fall out, and they had to be caught. So they would sit the girl inside one of these big sieves, and then when her hair was braided and combed, all the little bits would fall out, maybe a few dead insects as well. Now, of course, as the rules of Kli Kibble, the point of this sieve is not to be makabel, though all that dirt and muck, because as soon as the muck is in there, you're just going to throw it out. But the reason why this sieve is makabel tumah is, says the Mishnah, Tomei Moishav. This is the first time, apart from a small reference we had in Perik Aleph, that we're going to come across the rules of Mishkav and Moishav, otherwise known as Medris. We're going to hit it many, many times in the Masechta. Why is this Tomei Moishav? I'll explain. Because the girls actually sit inside this goydlois while their hair is being braided. The basic rule of Mishkav and Moishav is, when you have a kli, which is ro'ui le'mishkav and Moishav, for instance, a blanket, a chair, a bench, or in this case, a sieve, and then certain, I call them the group of four, Zov, Zova, Nida, V'yoledes, those four chomedika ones, and we also have to add Mitzayra. They have the ability to be metame, a kli, which is ro'oi lemishkav v'moishav, when they put their full body weight onto that kli, either by sitting or by lying or by standing or by leaning on it. Then that kli becomes an av hatumah known. That transfer of tumah is known as the tumas medris. The rule that we're saying here is, once a kli is a ro'ui the tumas medris, once it's a kli which is osur in mishkav or moshav, then even if it hasn't got a base kibble, for instance a chair doesn't have a base kibble, and yet because it's tomei under the rules of medris, in the case of a zova nidav viledes matzora sitting on it, it's now roy lekabel tumah for all tumas, even though it hasn't got a base kibble, because its color roy the medris is roy lekabel tumas. Chola tumas, including tumas mace, and that's what the Mishnah is saying here, that this sieve, this particular sieve, doesn't matter whether it's got a kibbutz or not. It's tomei moshav and therefore able to makabel all tumas under the normal rules. And we're going to come back to Mishkav Moshav many times again in Mitzvah Hashem, and that's the end of Mishnah.